Morning. That is a beautiful project out in East Chicago. I've been up there with Lynn. It is phenomenal. So encourage folks, if you know folks that are commuting to downtown, looking to live a little bit closer to the lakeshore, it is definitely a beautiful area. Also commend her for walking into City Hall. Again, had an agent contact me last week saying, I want to do work with the city of Gary. We've got an idea for condominium development. Picked up the phone, called City Hall and said, how can we help you? How can our family help yours? So look for those relationships as they become available or make them become available. As I was driving into work this morning, I was staring at the weather sprinter. That is a great way of calling it, Rhonda. And I was reminded of, it was days like this that on Saturdays I'd go over to my grandpa's house and we'd work in his wood shop. He'd give me free rein to cut up anything that I wanted. So I'd make birdhouses, I'd make toy swords, you name it. I never lost an appendage. And he never kicked me out of his wood shop when I would take his expensive black walnut or red oak and turn it into a very crooked birdhouse that I thought was just beautiful. But after we would run out of wood, we would then dive into these cardboard boxes that he had filled with, anyone recall the magazines Popular Science or Popular Mechanics? And I remember looking at these magazines and flipping through them as they talked about the machines of the future, thinking to myself, well, this will never come to fruition. This will never happen. Some of those machines probably have come to fruition, but some of those machines are still just far-fetched ideas in the imagination of somebody with pen and paper. And that really struck me the past couple weeks. We're in an industry that's potentially, people say, in a lot of flux. There's a lot of technology that's going to change things. But the calls that I get consistently over the past several years, they really haven't changed. The issues continue to be constant. And while people claim technology is going to replace us, it really hasn't. Because the standard forms, at the end of the day, they don't cover every instance, do they? And throughout the transaction, emotions change, facts change, things of that nature change, and it's our job to be there, to be that stable ship, to guide that ship through the water and make it navigable and get them to their destination. So it struck me this morning, that's the message that I want to pass on to you, is that while there's a message swirling around us that technology is attacking us, it's going to replace us, I think we're all experiencing, no, we utilize the technology to enable our client. 3 quick tips that I want to share with you this morning, 2 from Leading RE that I gleaned last week when I participated in a teleconference. Number 1, the first thing that was re-emphasized to me is when it comes to working with a client, experience and frame the story, don't preach it. And what the author meant by that is don't tell the person what's going to happen in the transaction. Instead, ask them, what do you anticipate is going to happen? Okay? So Dennis sits down with the client and asks them, what's your goal? Well, my goal is to purchase a 3-bedroom Cape Cod in Lowell. And how long do you think it's going to take? It could take a while. Do you think it's going to be easy? I don't know, Dennis. Do you make it easy for your clients? I try. Do you think there's going to be ups and downs? Well, I'm sure there's going to be. And the reason why that author suggested framing the transaction in light of a story and what their anticipations are is so that when you get to the point where suddenly something pops up out of nowhere that you weren't expecting, someone loses a job, a buyer backs out, Dennis can go back to the person and say, remember Bob and Susie when we started, and you said that there's going to be some hills and some valleys? This is one of the valleys we're experiencing, and we're going to climb out of it. So don't tell them we're going to go through hills and valleys. Let them experience and refer back to it in their own words. Number 2, don't tell them about what you're going to do for them. Instead, show them. We're part of Leading RE, and I think that's a really critical asset that we need to tap into. And one of the examples that this gentleman gave during the conversation was to sit down with the person and say, how many folks from out of town do you think are moving into Portage? How many folks from out of town are moving into Valparaiso? I think maybe 20% of the people are moving in. Okay. Now, do you think your local broker can tap into the 20% that are moving from outside the area? Would you like to know how Leading RE taps into the 20% that are leaving outside the area? Versus, well, Bob and Susie, I'm part of Leading RE, and let me tell you how that's going to help contribute. Instead, they've set the framework themselves. They've illustrated to you that, well, I think they're the experts, and then you advise them and let them, well, would you like to know more how we're going to reach that 20% that's coming from outside the area? Last thing, tying back into how we started, regarding popular mechanics, popular science, what I call now popular brokers. The relationship with our buyers may be slightly changing. Now, technology in the industry, some folks out there would say, well, technology is going to replace the representation of the buyer. It's not going to replace the representation of the buyer, because you know what? The buyer's still there, and that buyer still needs representation, okay? But how it happens may be slightly changing. You've heard me say it before, I'm going to say it again. I'm strongly encouraging everyone to turn to that buyer-broker contract. Just had an agent contact me last week to say, I was at a closing, and the buyer turned to me and said, how do I pay you? Well, you've already paid me. Well, no, I want to pay you directly for your services. So I think we're in a market where we really need to educate our buyers as to how we're representing them, and I think we need to tie them to us via a contractual relationship, especially when we have listings that are limiting the amount of commission for the extensive amount of work that you are doing. We received a lot of positive phone calls from folks that are enabling them, and they're getting that 2.5%, 3% that actually represents the quality and the time of work that they're putting in. So strongly encourage you to consider the buyer-broker contract in 2019. And as always, if there's anything they need from the legal department, reach out to myself, reach out to Rachel. We're here for you. Monica, the floor is yours.